Ambassador Kethrix stood behind the thick glass of the observation deck and watched something that made no sense to him at all. The creature in the cargo hold below was a Sithrak, one of the most dangerous predators in the known galaxy. And it was still alive, even though it was badly wounded from the crash that had brought its transport ship into Station Meridian 7 just 6 hours ago. Sithrak had 6 powerful legs that could tear through metal walls, fangs that dripped with venom strong enough to kill a Valorian in seconds, and black scales that could stop most energy weapons from doing any real damage. But right now, 3 of its legs were broken and twisted at wrong angles. Its scales were cracked and bleeding a dark purple fluid, and it lay on the cold metal floor making sounds that Kethrix had never heard a Sithrak make before, sounds of pain and weakness and something that might have been fear. And kneeling right next to this monster, close enough to touch it, was a human female. Kethrix pressed his 4-fingered hands against the glass and leaned forward, his large dark eyes blinking rapidly as he tried to understand what he was seeing. The human was small compared to the Sithrak, maybe 1/5 of its mass, with soft skin that had no scales or armor or any natural protection. At all, she had brown hair tied back from her face, and she wore a simple gray uniform with the symbol of the Human Science Division on her shoulder. Her hands moved with calm and steady purpose as she cleaned the wounds on the Sithrak's body. The creature snapped its fangs at her, its head moving fast even in its weakened state, and those venomous teeth came within inches of her throat. She did not jump back or scream or run away. She simply moved her head slightly to the side, let the fangs pass by her neck, and then went back to clean the wound as if nothing had happened at all. Kethrix felt his spines rise along his back, which was a sign of deep unease among his people. He had been a diplomat for the Valorian Consortium for over 30 cycles now, and he had met many species from across the galaxy. He had met the warlike Krethai, who valued strength and honor. Above all things, he had met the ancient Maluxi, who had traveled the stars for 1,000,000 years and considered themselves the wisest beings in existence. He had met the hive-minded Zelkoth, who thought and moved as one great organism, but he had never seen anything quite like this. Humans were new to the galactic community, having made first contact with the Consortium only 40 cycles ago. In that time, the diplomatic corps had studied them carefully and had come to what they believed was a clear understanding of the species. Humans were classified as irrationally empathetic in the official records. They formed emotional bonds with other species far too easily. They kept animals as companions, even when those animals served no useful purpose. They mourned their enemies after defeating them in battle. They wept for creatures that would happily devour them if given the chance. The Consortium had decided that this was a weakness, a flaw in their psychology that would limit their growth as a galactic power. Humans were soft. The report said humans were sentimental. Humans let their emotions override their logic. Kethrix had believed all of this until right now, watching this small human female tend to a wounded monster that could kill her with a single bite. He watched her pull out medical tools from her bag and begin to set the broken bones in the Sithrak's legs. The creature thrashed and roared, and its tail swept across the floor with enough force to dent the metal panels. The human rode out the thrashing like it was nothing, keeping her hands steady on the legs she was working on. And when the Sithrak finally went still again, she simply continued her work. There was no fear in her movements. Kethrix had seen fear in many species. Over his long career, he knew what it looked like when a being was afraid but pushing through that fear to do something brave. This was not. That this human was not afraid at all. She treated the Sithrak the same way Kethrix might treat a piece of furniture that needed to be repaired. It was just a task to be completed, a problem to be solved. And the fact that the problem had venomous fangs and could kill her in a instant did not seem to change anything for Herketh. Rix turned away from the glass and walked to the communication terminal on the wall. He pressed the button to connect to the station commander, a Valorian named Desic, who had been running Meridian 7 for the past 8 cycles. "Commander," Catherix said when the connection was made, "why is there a human in the cargo hold with the Sithrak survivor from the crash?" "Ambassador," Desic replied, his voice tired and confused. "We tried to stop her, but she insisted that the creature needed medical attention, and she said she was qualified to provide it as a xenobiologist with experience in predator species." "And you let her go in there alone with no weapons and no guards?" "She refused the guards, Ambassador, and she said weapons would only make the Sithrak more aggressive." Catherix was silent for a moment. "She has been in there for 6 hours now," Desic continued, "and she has not been injured, and the Sithrak seems to be responding to her treatment." "Responding how?" "It has stopped trying to attack her as often, Ambassador, and it let her feed it raw meat from the station stores about an hour ago." Catherix felt something cold settle in his thorax, a feeling he had not experienced in many cycles. He looked back at the observation glass. The human was now sitting next to the Sithrak, her back actually resting against the creature's side, and she was reading something on a datapad while the monster rested its massive head on its front legs and breathed slowly. The Sithrak was letting her touch it. The Sithrak was letting her lean against it. The Sithrak, one of the deadliest creatures in the galaxy, looked almost peaceful. Catherix had seen Sithrak before, in containment facilities and on nature recordings from their home world. They were never peaceful. They were always hunting, or fighting, or killing, or eating. They did not rest calmly next to other beings. They did not allow other beings to touch them, but this one was doing exactly that. And it had only taken one small human female 6 hours to make it happen. "Commander," Catherix said slowly, "I want a full file on that human sent to my quarters immediately. And I want to arrange a meeting with her as soon as she is finished with the creature." "Of course, Ambassador. May I ask why?" Catherix watched the human reach up without looking and scratch the Sithrak behind one of its ears, and the monster's eyes closed in what looked almost like pleasure. "Because I think we may have made a serious mistake in how we understand these beings," Catherix said. "And I need to find out exactly how serious that mistake might be." He ended the communication and stood there watching for a long time as the human and the predator rested together in the cargo hold like old friends, and the cold feeling in his thorax did not go away. 3 cycles passed and the Sithrak did not die. This was impossible according to everything Catherix knew about medicine and biology and the nature of predator species. A Sithrak with 3 broken legs and severe internal injuries should have died within hours, or at the very least it should have killed anything that came close to it in its pain and rage. Instead, the creature was healing. Its broken bones were mending under the careful splints the human had made. Its internal injuries were responding to the medications she had given it, and most disturbing of all, it had begun to follow her movements with its eyes whenever she entered the cargo hold, not with the look of a predator watching prey, but with something that looked almost like anticipation, like it was happy to see her. Catherix had watched the recordings from the cargo hold cameras over and over again, trying to understand what he was seeing. The human, whose name he now knew was Dr. Elena Vasquez, came to the cargo hold 4 times each day. Each time she brought food for the Sithrak, raw meat that she had obtained from the station stores. Each time she checked its wounds and changed its bandages and spoke to it in a soft, calm voice. And each time the Sithrak allowed her to do these things without trying to kill her. In the second day, it had started making a low rumbling sound. When she arrived, a sound that Kethrix had never heard a Sithrak make before. He had consulted the xenobiology database and found no record of such a vocalization. It was something new, something the creature had invented just for Irby. The third day, the Sithrak would press its head against her hand. When she reached out to touch it, Kethrix could not wait any longer. He sent a formal request for a meeting with Dr. Vasquez, and she accepted immediately, suggesting they meet in one of the station's small conference rooms. When Kethrix arrived, she was already there, sitting in a chair that was slightly too large for her small frame. Drinking something hot from a ceramic cup, she smiled when she saw him and gestured for him to sit across from her. "Ambassador Kethrix," she said, "I was wondering when you would want to talk. I saw you watching from the observation deck on the first day." Kethrix settled into his chair, his spines folding flat against his back in what he hoped was a relaxed posture. "Dr. Vasquez, I must admit that I am deeply confused by what I have observed over the past 3 cycles. The Sithrak? Yes, I do not understand what you are doing with it, or why you are doing it, or how you are still alive." Dr. Vasquez laughed, and it was a warm, genuine sound that made Kethrix feel even more unsettled. "Those are good questions, Ambassador. Let me try to answer them." She set down her cup and leaned forward with her hands folded on the table. "What I am doing is providing medical care to an injured animal and beginning the early stages of a bonding process. Why I am doing it is because the Sithrak is a fascinating species with tremendous potential, and I could not simply let it die when I had the skills to save it. And how I am still alive is because I understand predators. Understand them how? I understand what they need, Ambassador. I understand what they fear and what they want and how they think. And I use that understanding to show them that I am not a threat and that I can provide things they need." Kethrix shook his head slowly, a gesture he had learned from watching humans. "But the Sithrak does not need you. Dr. Vasquez, it is an apex predator from a Class 12 death world. It needs nothing from any other species except meat to eat. That is where you are wrong," she said, and her smile changed into something sharper. "Every creature needs things, Ambassador, even apex predators. They need food and safety and medical care when they are injured. And if you can provide those things, then you can start to build a relationship. A relationship with a monster? The Sithrak is not a monster. It is simply a predator doing what predators do. It did not choose to be dangerous any more than you chose to have spines on your back. It simply is what it is." Kethrix considered this for a moment. "Ambassador," Dr. Vasquez said, "may I ask you a question in return?" "Of course. What do you know about Earth?" Kethrix accessed his memory files on the human homeworld. It is a Class 12 death world in the outer spiral arm of the galaxy. It has extreme temperature variations and frequent natural disasters and an unusually high percentage of predator species. Your people should not have achieved sentience according to standard evolutionary models. "Exactly right," she said. "Earth is one of the most dangerous planets in the known galaxy. And yet humans not only survived there, but became the dominant species. Yes. This has been a subject of much study among our scientists. And what conclusions have they reached?" Kethrix hesitated, because he was not sure he should share the official consortium assessment with a human, but something in her eyes told him that she already knew what he was going to say. They concluded that humans are irrationally empathetic, he said, that you form emotional bonds too easily, and that this is a weakness that you compensated for through tool use and social cooperation. Dr. Vasquez nodded slowly. "That is what I thought you would say. And it is not entirely wrong, but it misses the most important part of the story." "What part is that?" She stood up from her chair and walked to the window that looked out at the stars. "Ambassador, Earth is full of predators. Not just small ones, but massive, terrifying creatures that could tear a human apart in seconds. Wolves that hunt in packs with teeth and claws and incredible endurance. Bears that stand twice as tall as a human and weigh 10 times as much. Tigers that can kill with a single bite to the throat. Crocodiles that have existed unchanged for 200 million years because they were already perfect killing machines. She turned back to face him. When humans first encountered these predators, we were weak. We had no claws or fangs or armor. We were slower than most of them and weaker than all of them. By every logical measure, we should have been prey. But you were not, Kethrix said. No, we were not. Do you know why? Kethrix shook his head. Dr. Vasquez walked back to the table and placed her hands flat on its surface, leaning toward him with an intensity that made his spines want to rise. Because we did not just survive the predators. Ambassador, we did not just run from them, or hide from them, or kill them when we had to. Her eyes met his. And Kethrix saw something in them that he had never seen in a human before, something old and patient and utterly certain. We made them ours. The words hung in the air between them. I do not understand, Kethrix said, though he was beginning to fear that he did. Yes, you do, she said softly. You are starting to understand right now. I can see it in the way your spines are moving. She straightened up and smiled again. But this time, the smile did not reach her eyes. The Sithrak in that cargo hold is not my patient. Ambassador, it is not my charity case, and it is not my act of irrational empathy. She picked up her cup and took a long drink before finishing her thought. It is the first step in a process that my species has been perfecting for 100,000 years. And by the time that process is complete, the Sithrak will not just tolerate humans. She set the cup down with a soft click. It will love us. Kethrix could not sleep that night. The words of Dr. Vasquez echoed in his mind over and over again. And every time he closed his eyes, he saw the image of that Sithrak pressing its massive head against her small human hand. It will love us. What did that mean? How could a predator love the prey species that it should be hunting? The next morning, he sent another message to Dr. Vasquez, asking if she would be willing to continue their conversation and show him more about what she meant. She agreed immediately and told him to meet her in the station's data archive where she had been compiling research on human predator relationships. When he arrived, she was standing in front of a large display screen that showed an image of a creature he did not recognize. It had 4 legs and a long snout and fur covering. Its body and its mouth was open, showing rows of sharp teeth. This is a wolf, Dr. Vasquez said without turning around. One of the most successful pack predators on Earth. They hunted in groups, and they could bring down prey much larger than themselves through cooperation and endurance. They looked dangerous, Kethrix said. They were extremely dangerous. Ambassador, wolves killed humans regularly in the early days of our species. They competed with us for food and territory, and they had every advantage over us in terms of natural weapons. She touched the screen, and the image changed to show a different creature. This one was smaller with floppy ears and a wagging tail, and it was sitting next to a human child with its tongue hanging out of its mouth. This is a dog, Dr. Vasquez said. It is the same species as the wolf. Kethrix stared at the screen in disbelief. That cannot be correct. These two creatures look nothing alike. They are genetically almost identical, Ambassador. The difference is about 15,000 years of selective breeding and domestication. She turned to face him with her arms crossed over her chest. Humans took the wolf, one of our most dangerous competitors, and over hundreds of generations we transformed it into the dog. Our most loyal companion. Dogs will die for their human masters. They will fight to protect human children. They will love their humans with an intensity that most species cannot even comprehend. Kethrix felt his spines rising despite his efforts to keep them flat. How is this possible? It started with food, Dr. Vasquez said. Some wolves figured out that if they stayed near human camps, they could eat the scraps that humans left behind. And humans figured out that if they let those wolves stay close, the wolves would warn them when other predators approached. She touched the screen again, and a series of images began to scroll past. Over time, the wolves that were less aggressive toward humans got more food and more protection. And they had more offspring, and those offspring were even less aggressive. And eventually, after many generations, you had wolves that actively wanted to be around humans, that sought out human contact, that formed emotional bonds with human families. You bred the danger out of them. We bred the aggression toward humans out of them. But we kept the loyalty and the protectiveness and the hunting instincts. We just redirected those instincts to serve our purposes instead of competing with us. She showed him more images, massive creatures called horses that humans rode on their backs, controlling them with simple straps of leatherbirds with sharp talons and hooked beaks that humans trained to hunt for them and then return to their hands. Huge, striped cats that some humans kept in their homes. Despite the obvious danger, every apex predator on Earth, Dr. Vasquez said, humanity either domesticated or drove to extinction or pushed to the far edges of the world where they could no longer threaten us. And the ones we domesticated became our greatest assets. Our horses let us travel faster than any other species. Our dogs helped us hunt and protected our homes. Our falcons extended our reach into the sky. Kethrix was having trouble processing what he was seeing in the Valorian Consortium. Predators were threats to be managed. You killed them or you avoided them or you built walls to keep them out. The idea of taking a predator and making it into a servant, a companion, a friend, was so alien to his thinking that he struggled to even form the concepts properly. Dr. Vasquez, he said slowly, are you telling me that humans do this intentionally? That you deliberately seek out dangerous predators and convert them into allies? Not always intentionally, she said. A lot of it happens naturally because of the way humans are wired. We see a dangerous animal and something in our brain says, I wonder if I could make friends with that, instead of I should run away. It is not a choice we make, Ambassador. It is simply who we are. That is terrifying. I know, she said with a small smile. But from our perspective, it just feels normal. It feels right to form bonds with other creatures. It feels good to earn the trust of something that could kill you. She walked over to a chair and sat down, gesturing for him to join her. Let me tell you about the first time I worked with a Sithrak. Ambassador, it was about 5 years ago on a research station in the Karnak system. We had captured a young one for study, and everyone was afraid of it. They wanted to keep it sedated all the time so it could not hurt anyone. That seems reasonable. I thought so too at first. But then I started watching it through the containment field, and I noticed that it was not just aggressive, it was scared. It was a young animal taken from its home and surrounded by strange creatures that it could not understand. Of course it was lashing out. She leaned back in her chair with a distant look in her eyes, so I started talking to it, just sitting outside the containment field and speaking in a calm voice. I did not expect anything to happen, but after a few weeks, it stopped trying to attack the field when I was there. It would just watch me and listen. And then I started bringing it food, fresh meat from the station stores. I would push it through the feeding slot and the Sithrak would eat it while I watched. And over time, it started to associate my presence with food and safety. Its stress hormones dropped whenever I arrived. Its aggressive displays decreased by over 80%. You were domesticating it. I was beginning the process. Yes, I was building trust, showing it that humans could provide things it needed, and that Sithrak, Ambassador, is still alive today on a human research colony. It has never harmed a human, and it lets researchers touch it and examine it, and it even seems to enjoy the contact. She looked at him directly with an expression he could not quite read. "That is what I am doing with the Sithrak in the cargo hold. I am showing it that humans are not threats but providers, not enemies but friends. And in 50 years, its descendants might be guarding human colonies across the galaxy. In 50 years? Domestication takes time, Ambassador. It took us 15,000 years to fully transform wolves into dogs. But we have better technology now, better understanding of genetics and behavior. I estimate we can have a domesticated Sithrak breed in 3 to 5 generations." Ketherick sat in silence for a long moment. "Dr. Vasquez," he finally said, "do you understand how this sounds to someone who is not human? How does it sound?" He searched for the right words. "It sounds like you are describing a weapon," he said. "The most sophisticated weapon I have ever heard of. One that takes your enemies and turns them into servants over the course of generations. One that operates through kindness and food and patience instead of violence." Dia Vasquez tilted her head and looked at him with an expression that might have been curiosity or might have been something else entirely. "I never thought of it that way," she said. "But I suppose you might be right." She stood up and walked toward the door. "I need to go feed the Sithrak now. Ambassador, would you like to come with me and see the process in action?" Every instinct Ketherick's had told him to say no instead. He stood up and followed her out of the archive. He needed to see this for himself. The emergency session of the Consortium High Council was called 7 Cycles. After Ketherick's began his investigation, he had spent those 7 cycles gathering data and interviewing human crew members on the station and watching Dr. Vasquez work with the Sithrak and reviewing every piece of information the Consortium had collected on humanity since first contact. What he had found terrified him in ways he could not fully express. Now he stood in the center of the great circular chamber where the 12 High Counselors sat in their elevated seats, and he prepared to deliver the most important report of his career. "Ambassador Ketherick's," said High Counselor Yemeth, the eldest of the 12 and the leader of the session. "You requested this emergency meeting with claims of critical intelligence regarding the human species. Please present your findings." Ketherick took a deep breath and activated the display system. An image of Dr. Vasquez appeared on the main screen, kneeling beside the Sithrak in the cargo hold. 12 cycles ago, a damaged transport ship crashed into Station Meridian 7, carrying a single Sithrak survivor. As you all know, the Sithrak are Class 9 apex predators, considered extremely dangerous to all known species. The counselors nodded, their spines and tentacles and various appendages moving in gestures of acknowledgement. A cause human scientist named Dr. Elena Vasquez requested permission to provide medical care to the wounded creature. Despite the obvious danger, she entered the cargo hold alone and began treating its injuries. "Foolishness," muttered Counselor Lessig. "Human irrationality at its finest." "That is what I thought as well," Ketherick said, "until I watched what happened over the following cycles." He changed the image to show a recording of the Sithrak pressing its head against Dr. Vasquez's hand. Within 3 cycles, the Sithrak had stopped trying to attack her. Within 5 cycles, it was actively seeking physical contact with her. Within 7 cycles, it would follow her commands and allow her to lead it around the cargo, hold on a simple leash. The chamber fell silent. "This is impossible," Counselor Morris said. "The Sithrak does not form bonds. It does not submit to other species. Our records clearly state that it is incapable of domestication." "Our records are wrong," Ketherick said. "Or rather, our records failed to account for the unique capabilities of the human species." He brought up a new series of images showing the history Dr. Vasquez had shared with him. Humans evolved on a Class 12 death world surrounded by apex predators that should have hunted them to extinction. But instead of being destroyed by these predators, humans developed a strategy that no other species in the galaxy has ever employed. He paused to make sure he had their full attention. They domesticated them. The images scrolled across the screen. Wolves becoming dogs, wild horses becoming mounts, deadly cats becoming companions. Over the course of their history, humans have taken nearly every dangerous predator on their home world, and through a process of selective breeding and behavioral conditioning, transformed them into loyal servants and partners. Counselor Yemeth leaned forward in his seat with his eyes wide. You are suggesting that human compassion is not weakness, but strategy? No, Kethrick said. It is worse than strategy. Strategy implies conscious calculation. What humans do is instinct. They do not think about converting predators to allies. They simply cannot help themselves. When they see a dangerous creature, their first impulse is not to flee or fight, but to befriend. He pulled up the Galactic Species Registry and highlighted the behavioral profiles of various civilizations. The Valorians avoid predator species whenever possible and build barriers to keep them away from our settlements. The Krethi exterminate any predator that threatens their colonies. The Moluxi have spent millions of years developing technology to detect and evade predators before they can attack. Every species in the known galaxy treats apex predators as threats, to be managed through avoidance or elimination. He highlighted the human entry. Humans see them as opportunities. The council chamber erupted in murmurs and whispered conversations. Kath Rix waited for the noise to die down before continuing. In the 40 cycles since first contact, humans have already begun what they call research relationships with 7 species rated Class 8 or higher on the predator scale, including the Sithrek. Research relationships? Counselor Thesic asked. That is their term for the early stages of domestication. They study the predator. They learn its behaviors and needs. They begin building trust through food and medical care and consistent contact. And over time, they convert hostility into dependency, and then dependency into loyalty. How long does this process take? For a new species, it can take generations, but humans are patient. Ambassador? They think in terms of decades and centuries, where other species think in terms of days and years. They are willing to invest enormous time and resources into building relationships that will not pay off until long after the original participants are dead. Counselor Yemeth rose from his seat. A rare display of emotion from the usually composed leader, Ambassador Kethrix. Are you telling us that humans are systematically attempting to domesticate the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy? I am telling you that they are doing it without even realizing that it is unusual. To them, this is simply what you do when you encounter a new species. You learn about it. You try to understand it. You find ways to coexist with it. And if it is dangerous, you find ways to make it less dangerous or to redirect the danger toward your enemies. Their enemies. Counselor Morris repeated slowly. Yes. That is the other part of this equation. Domesticated predators do not become harmless. They become weapons. Human dogs still have teeth. Human horses are still strong enough to trample opponents. The humans simply redirect the power toward targets of their choosing. The council sat in stunned silence. Ekathrix brought up one final image. A projection showing the locations of all known human research relationships with predator species across the galaxy. There are currently 17 human research stations working with Class 7 or higher predators. Each one represents the beginning of a domestication process that could give humans access to new biological weapons, new guardian species, new partners for colonization and expansion. And they have only been in the galaxy for 40 cycles. Counselor Yemeth said quietly. Yes, Kethrix confirmed. And in that time, they have already begun to build relationships with more predator species than the Vrayas Consortium has encountered in our entire history. He deactivated the display and stood in the center of the chamber with his spines fully raised. Counselors. We classified humans as irrationally empathetic and assumed this was a weakness. We believed their kindness toward dangerous creatures was foolishness. We thought their compassion made them soft. He looked around at the 12 faces staring down at him. We were wrong. Their compassion is not weakness. It is the most effective predator integration strategy the galaxy has ever seen. And we have given them 40 cycles to begin implementing it while we watched and did nothing. The silence that followed was absolute. Finally, Counselor Yemeth spoke. What do you recommend we do, Ambassador? Kethrix had been dreading this question because he did not have a good answer. I do not know, he admitted. You cannot fight a species whose primary weapon is friendship. You cannot defend against an enemy whose first attack is offering to help you. He thought about Dr. Vasquez and the way she had smiled at him when she invited him to watch her feed the Sithrak. Think we need to understand them better before we decide anything. And I think we need to do it carefully, because humans are very good at noticing when other species are paying attention to them. And what happens when they notice? Kethrix remembered the words Dr. Vasquez had said to him just before he left the station to deliver this report. Then they start trying to make friends, he said. The formal inquiry was drafted carefully over the course of 3 cycles with input from every member of the High Council. They debated every word and considered every possible interpretation and tried to find a way to ask the question that would not seem threatening or hostile. In the end, they settled on simple and direct language. The message was sent to Earth United Governing Council through official diplomatic channels and then the consortium. Wade Ectherix spent those waiting cycles back on Station Meridian 7. Watching Dr. Vasquez continue her work with the Sithraks, creature had healed almost completely. Now its legs were strong again, and it could walk and run and even hunt. The small prey animals that Dr. Vasquez released into the cargo hoped for it to chase, but it never tried to hurt her. When she entered the hold, it would make that strange rumbling sound and walk toward her with its tail, moving in slow sweeps behind it. When she reached out to touch it, the creature would lean into her hand like a pet seeking affection. When she left the hold, it would watch the door for hours, waiting for her to return. It is bonded to you now, Kethrix said one day as they watched the Sithrak through the observation glass. Yes, Dr. Vasquez agreed. The foundation is solid. With the right program, we could begin selective breeding within a few years. What will you do with it? We have a facility on a human colony world where we work with bonded predators. It will be transferred there once the paperwork is complete, and it will help us develop our understanding of Sithrak behavior and biology, and eventually its descendants will be domesticated. That is the hope. Imagine it, Ambassador, Sithrak guarding human settlements, protecting our children, helping us explore dangerous worlds where other species fear to go. Kethrix imagined it, and the image made him deeply uncomfortable. Dr. Vasquez, may I ask you something personal? Of course. Do you understand why the Council is concerned about humans? She turned away from the glass to look at him directly. I think so. You are afraid of what we might do with the predators we befriend. You are worried that we will use them as weapons against you. Yes, Ambassador. I want to tell you something important, and I want you to believe me when I say it. She took a step closer to him, and her voice became soft and earnest. Humans do not want to conquer the galaxy. We do not want to dominate other species or force them to serve us. What we want is something much simpler than that. What do you want? We want friends, she said. We want connections and relationships and bonds with other beings. We want to not be alone in the universe. That is what drives everything we do, even the domestication of predators. We are not building an army, Ambassador. We are building a family. Kethrix wanted to believe her. He wanted to believe that humans were simply friendly creatures who meant no harm to anyone. But he had seen the recordings of Earth's history. He had seen what happened to species that refused to be befriended. Predators that could not be domesticated had been driven to extinction or pushed to the edges of the world. Where they struggled to survive, the humans had not done this out of malice or hatred. They had done it because that was simply how they operated. Join the family or be pushed aside. There was no third option. The response from Earth came 5 cycles later. Kethrix was present in the council chamber when the message was read aloud by Councillor Yemeth to the Valorian Consortium High Council. The message began, "Thank you for your inquiry regarding our predator research programs. We understand that our approach to dangerous species may seem unusual from the perspective of other civilizations, and we appreciate your desire to learn more about our intentions." The counselors listened in tense silence. "We wish to assure you that humans have no hostile intentions toward any sentient species in the galaxy. Our research relationships with predator species are motivated purely by scientific curiosity and a desire to find peaceful solutions to the challenges of coexistence. We simply believe that every creature, properly understood and cared for, can become a friend and partner. Humanity has always found strength in the bonds we form with other species, from the dogs that guard our homes to the horses that carry us across great distances to the countless other animals that share our lives and our worlds. We look forward to forming such bonds across the galaxy, with predator and prey alike, and we hope that one day the Valorian Consortium and all the species of the galaxy will count humans among their closest friends and allies." The message paused and then concluded with words that made Kethrix's blood run cold. "We hope you will let us be your friends too." The council chamber was silent for a long moment after the message ended. Finally, Councillor Yemeth spoke. "They are not threatening us." "No," Kethrix agreed. "They are doing something far more terrifying than threatening us." "What do you mean?" Kethrix thought about everything he had learned over the past cycles. He thought about Dr. Vasquez and her patient steady work with the Sithrek. Thought about the wolves that became dogs and the horses that became mounts and the deadly cats that became beloved companions. He thought about the way humans saw every dangerous creature, not as a threat to be avoided, but as a potential friend, waiting to be made counselors. He said slowly, "What do you think happens when a human decides that another species is their friend?" No one answered. "They feed them," Kethrix continued. "They care for them. They spend time with them and learn their needs and find ways to provide for those needs. They are patient and kind and generous, and over time the other species comes to depend on that kindness." He looked around the chamber at the 12 most powerful individuals in the consortium. And once that dependency is established, once the bond is formed, the other species will do almost anything to maintain it. They will change their behavior to please their human friends. They will defend humans against threats. They will follow humans into danger and fight by their side. "You are describing domestication," Councillor Morith said. "I am describing what humans do to every species they decide to befriend. Whether that species has 4 legs or 2, whether it has scales or fur or spines, whether it is a mindless predator or a sentient civilization with 1,000 years of history." The council sat in stunned silence as the implications sank in. "That message," Kethrix said, pointing to the screen where the human response was still displayed, "is not a diplomatic communication. It is the first feeding. They are offering us their friendship and their kindness and their help, and if we accept it, we will begin a process that will end with us depending on them, and if we refuse..." Kethrix thought about the extinct predators of Earth, the great beasts that had refused to be domesticated and had been pushed to the edges of the world. "Then they will be patient," he said. "They will wait and they will try again. And they will keep trying until we accept or until we are no longer relevant. Because that is what humans do. They do not conquer, they do not destroy. They simply keep offering friendship until the other species accepts." He looked at the message one more time. "We hope you will let us be your friends too." "They are not threatening us," Ketherick said. "They are offering to feed us." And in that moment, every counselor in the chamber understood exactly what that meant. The most dangerous predator in the galaxy was not the Sithrak with its venomous fangs. It was not the great beasts of Earth that had been transformed into loyal servants. It was the small, soft creatures who looked at every monster in the universe and saw a friend they had not met yet. And they were already reaching out their hands with food and kindness and warmth waiting to see who would come to eat. The meeting ended with no resolution, because there was no resolution to be had. You cannot fight an enemy whose weapons are patience and compassion. You cannot defend against an attack that feels like love. The consortium would discuss and debate and analyze for years to come. But Tethrix already knew how it would end somewhere. Out there a human was smiling and waiting, and sooner or later the consortium would get hungry.